Auschwitz was not just a camp, it was a vast system where every detail, from food to architecture, was designed for suffering. Here, 700 prisoners, often crammed into spaces built for 180. Rations could fall to just 300 calories a day. Block 11 turned punishment into architecture and medicine into a tool of cruelty. But how did such a machinery of oppression shape daily life? And what traces did it really leave behind? Each morning began before sunrise. Prisoners were roused by shouts, stumbling from crowded bunks into the dim, cold air. The barracks, built for 180 people, held as many as 700 people pressed together. Bodies jostled for space, for a moment at the wash basin, for a place in the line. Hunger was constant. Official rations ranged from 1,700 calories down to as little as 300 calories, barely enough to survive a single day of hard labor. Black bread, watery soup, a scrap of margarine, always less than what was needed, always leaving emptiness behind. Work details stretched for 12 hours or more. Prisoners marched out in lines, assigned to haul stones, dig ditches, or build roads. The pace was relentless, and rest was rare. Any weakness could draw a beating or worse. The daily struggle was not just against exhaustion, but against a system designed to grind people down. Primo Levi, who survived these routines, recalled, "One entered hunger as one enters a dark wood." At night, returning to the barracks offered little comfort. The air was thick with breath and fatigue. Sleep came in short bursts, broken by the movements of hundreds sharing the same narrow space. In these conditions, survival meant enduring the endless cycle of deprivation, day after day, night after night. Inside the camp, the promise of care turned into something else entirely. Block 10 became a place where medicine lost its meaning. Doctors, trained to heal, used their authority to cause harm. Prisoners were selected for experiments, chosen not for treatment, but for what could be learned from their suffering. Eva Moses Kor arrived at Auschwitz in 1944, only 10 years old, with her twin sister Miriam. On the ramp, guards separated the twins from their mother. Eva recalled, "We were just pulled apart. I remember holding Miriam's hand, and then suddenly, we were alone. The guards told us we were going to see a doctor." For Eva and Miriam, this separation was the beginning of months inside the so-called medical wing. Their days were filled with examinations, injections, and endless measurements. The purpose was never explained. The effects, fevers, infections, and fear were felt in every waking moment. The Nuremberg doctors' trial later exposed how these acts were justified as research. The transcripts described procedures on twins, mass sterilization, and deliberate infection, all under the false banner of science. In reality, the camp's medical rooms became sites of betrayal, where the trust between patient and doctor was broken beyond repair. After Eva's testimony, there is only silence. The weight of what happened in those rooms lingers, unspoken, a reminder of how easily ethics can be abandoned when cruelty becomes routine. Block 11 stood at the heart of the camp, its red brick walls concealing a system of punishment built into the very architecture. The basement held rows of cells, some kept in darkness, others designed for a different form of degradation. 4 standing cells, each less than 1 square meter, forced prisoners to remain upright through the night. Entry was through a hatch at floor level. There was no room to sit, and barely enough space to breathe. In the morning, they were sent to labor, and then returned to the same cramped space. The SS blueprints for Block 11 show heavy doors, barred windows, and narrow corridors, all calculated to isolate and intimidate. Guards logged every confinement, recording names and durations in ledgers that survive in the archives. Rudolf Haas, the camp commandant, later testified at Nuremberg that blocks like 11 were used for special punishment, and that some orders came from Berlin. Surveillance was constant. Watchtowers overlooked the block, searchlights swept the yard at night, and guard patrols circled the perimeter. Every movement was visible, every sound noticed. Lengthy roll calls took place just outside, with prisoners forced to stand in silence, exposed to the eyes of the SS. The proximity of Block 11 to the so-called death wall made the threat of execution ever present. In this place, space itself became a weapon, enforcing fear and obedience even when no words were spoken. Women and children arrived at Auschwitz in numbers that defy comprehension. Registers list nearly 130,000 women, daughters, mothers, grandmothers, brought from every corner of occupied Europe. Each was forced to surrender her name for a number, her clothes for a uniform, her hair to the shears. In the women's barracks, routines of survival took shape in whispers and gestures. Charlotte Delbo recalled, "We whispered songs in the darkness, shared rags to cover ourselves, and, in that way, we kept something of ourselves alive." For many, these small acts became a form of quiet resistance, a way to preserve dignity when all else was stripped away. Children faced a fate even more precarious. Camp records show that at least 232,000 boys and girls were deported to Auschwitz. Most were torn from their families on arrival, their lives measured in days or hours. Their shoes and photographs, left behind, remain as fragile evidence of their existence. In a place built to erase identity, these traces endure, a reminder that every number once belonged to a person, and every object to a story that was nearly lost. A pair of shoes, a battered suitcase, a name written in fading ink. These are what remain when memory is threatened with erasure. Inside the museum today, nearly 80,000 shoes line silent shelves, each one once belonging to a person who walked through the gates and never returned. There are 3,800 suitcases, many still marked with addresses and birth years, packed by their owners in the belief that they might one day reclaim them. One suitcase bears the name Abram Zelmanovich. Its presence, carefully catalogued and preserved, restores a fragment of identity to someone lost in the mass of arrivals. Each object is a witness, carrying the weight of a life interrupted. The provenance files trace these artifacts back to transports from cities like Lodz, Paris, or Amsterdam, each a thread leading to a vanished home. Even as the owners disappeared, these belongings endured. In the face of systematic destruction, the objects left behind testify to lives that cannot be reduced to numbers. Through them, memory persists, and the human story endures, quietly defying oblivion. Inside the camp, small acts of solidarity offered a fragile lifeline. Prisoners formed quiet networks, sharing crusts of bread or a whispered warning about a brutal guard. These gestures were not only about survival, they became a way to hold on to humanity. In 1944, the resistance group known as Kampfgruppe Auschwitz risked everything to help two prisoners, Rudolf Verba and Alfred Wetzler, escape. Hiding for 11 days in a cramped space beneath a woodpile, they relied on the courage and silence of others to avoid detection. When they finally reached safety, the report they wrote described the machinery of extermination in detail. Their words crossed borders, reaching the outside world and exposing the crimes hidden behind the camp's fences. As the front drew closer in January 1945, the SS forced nearly 60,000 prisoners onto death marches. Those too weak to walk were left behind. Prisoners tried to help one another during these evacuations, sharing scraps of food, supporting the frail, sometimes carrying those who could not go on. Many did not survive the journey. Yet, even in the face of collapse, the networks of aid and resistance did not dissolve. The final days revealed both the camp's unraveling and the endurance of those who refused to let cruelty have the last word. Auschwitz's ruins warn us. Systems built on dehumanization can re-emerge wherever vigilance wanes. This is a warning. As acts of anti-Semitism and denial rise today, remembrance is not passive. It is protection. The memory endures only if we choose to carry it forward. What responsibility will we accept now?